Hello and welcome to another episode of the Young Tongues podcast. My name is Barbara Fountain and I'm the CEO and founder of the Young Tongues, a peer-to-peer support group for young tongue cancer patients across the world. And I bring you another fantastic guest from our community, Lauren Folks, here with me today. Lauren, it's so lovely to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. So happy to be here.
And one of the things we like to do at the beginning is to get to know our community beyond the cancer diagnosis. So could you introduce yourself to the Young Tongues and our listeners of who is Lauren?
It's such a loaded question, isn't it? Well, I'm Lauren. I live in Virginia. I'm 39 years old. I have 3 kids who are 7, 12, and tomorrow I'll have a 15-year-old as well. So I'm a busy mom, but beyond all of that, I'm a writer. I've published a lot of my own uh, like little zines. I don't know if anybody in the zine community would know anything about that. I was in the past a guitar player and singer. Haven't done that in a while. But I pretty much do a lot of mom things. I do a lot of writing, and I don't know. I love music. I'm definitely always trying to see live music and listen to music and things like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it'll be lovely for us to talk about how your diagnosis has also impacted all those different things. So,
Mhm.
speaking of the diagnosis, how did you realise that something wasn't right? When was it, and how did you know that you needed to get a checkup?
Oh my gosh, it's actually really interesting. Around November in 2021, I started having what I thought was an ear infection. And I'm not a person who gets a lot of ear infections. So I was like, you know what? Let me go to the doctor and see if they can give me some medicine. So I went to my normal doctor and they said, oh, yeah, it looks really swollen in here and red. Here's some, amoxicillin or some sort of antibiotic. And I said, oh, great. And I said, you should feel better in a few days. Well, a few days went by, nothing happened. Like 2 weeks went by, and the ear pain was getting worse and worse. So I went to like a different doctor. I went to an urgent care just to see if I could get like a second opinion. Maybe it wasn't the right antibiotic. And they were like, oh, yeah, it's definitely swollen in here. Like, obviously, whatever they gave you didn't work. So at this point, it was like right near Thanksgiving, and I was just in excruciating pain. My ear was like, it felt like someone was stabbing the inside of my ear canal. And so I was like, fine, okay. So I took the medicine again. Still, nothing is happening. Nothing's better. My children are excited for the holidays. We have plans to travel. And then all of a sudden, while this is going on, my tongue, I had like this tiny little, like what I thought might be a taste bud that was inflamed or something, like a burning feeling pop up on the left side of my tongue. And I didn't really know what to think about it. I kind of was ignoring it. I was eventually it started getting worse. I went to the ENT finally because my ear was still bothering me, and my two of my children have had ear tubes, so we have an ENT we use. And the ENT doctor was like, you know what? I don't think it's anything. He was like, but you don't have an ear infection, and I don't think you've ever had an ear infection. And I was like, really? And he was like, let's just see what happens. And he like tried to like clean out my ear a little bit. He thought maybe it was like impacted wax or something crazy. Anyway, sorry, this is kind of a long story.
No, but it's really important to get all those nuances.
Yeah. Anyway, I went home. He was like, look, if the thing on your tongue doesn't feel better in about 2 weeks, give me a call. But he was like, I think it's just going to go away. I think it's just an inflamed papillary something, like a taste bud, I think that's the term for it. Anyway, I went home, and being the, new age person I am on the internet, I this thing was I thought it was a canker sore. That was my initial like, okay, this is like a sore from having like a sinus infection or something going on with my whole like ear, nose, throat deal. So I started asking around on message boards. I'm part of a music community message board full of moms, right? And so I posted something and I said, look, does anyone know how to get rid of a canker sore? Because it's really bothering me. I've had it for 2 weeks. My ear hurts. And thank God, like a woman came on and she was like, hey, look, can I send you a message? And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. You're gonna give me advice. I don't know. Anyway, she sent me this message and she said, look, my sister had the same exact thing that you're talking about, and she didn't think anything of it. And she went to her ENT finally, and it ended up being cancer. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. It's like not gonna be cancer. What are you talking about? And she was like, I'm serious. Make your appointment right now. Even hasn't been 2 weeks. If it's bigger, like go now. And so she really scared me. And I was like, okay, I guess we're just going to do this again. So I called the ENT and he was like, yeah, I don't think that you need to come back in, but come on. So this was like, we had just traveled for Christmas. We went to my partner's parents' house, which is like 2 hours from us, with our kids, and all of his brothers were there with their kids. And I was so angry and unhappy on that trip. Like, I was in so much pain and I was so mean, and I'm never mean. I'm a very passive person. Anyway, we got back and I went to the ENT appointment that that girl had made me made. And the ENT immediately looked at my tongue and he said, I am so sorry, I was wrong. And I was like, you were wrong. And he said, whatever that is, it's going to need to be removed. I'm going to take a biopsy. And I was like, a biopsy? What? How did we get here from an inflamed taste bud? And he was like, well, sometimes, things happen. I was pretty disappointed. I was terrified. I went to the appointment by myself. And I don't know if you would remember, but that biopsy hurts. That first time when they take that thing off, and the sore had turned into like an open thing, like stuff was
Wounds.
getting stuck in it. Anyway, he took the biopsy, and of course, I don't know how you guys have it where you live, but I'm sure you've heard this before. In America, my chart is really terrible, and they uploaded the results into my chart and was going back and forth like, should I open it? Should I wait? I don't know. I've never been through something like this. And of course, I'm an idiot, and I opened it on a Friday at 5 o'clock
Oh
where there
no.
should be no doctor available. And of course, it said squamous cell of the tongue, keratinizing, whatever. And I lost my mind and I started freaking out, crying. I like got in the car and went to my mom because my mom is like my rock. Anyway, that's how I found out the first time. And this is also to tell you this that was the first time. The second time was a month later, and it was back as stage 4 after a surgery. So that was the
Wow.
first time I found out something was wrong.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. My chart and similar applications are making are becoming more mainstream here as well, and definitely so much help. Like when you are diagnosed and trying to help manage all your different information and appointments, but yeah, I think there needs to be some real guardrails in there to make sure that people don't get the news of their diagnosis via an app, because it's too much information and for someone to compute, and I
Right.
do feel like you need a human touch in order to understand what the diagnosis means as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so you just mentioned, so you had your first diagnosis,
Uh-huh.
and then they
So,
removed it, or how
so
much? And
yeah, so I didn't want to continue on because it's a long story, but I'll continue if you want me to go into how I got to my second diagnosis
yeah.
and what happened then. But yeah, what happened was um, a doctor finally called me back 3 days later because it was like a 3-day weekend or something crazy like that. So I had just been stewing in this news with my family, and it was the day after. Actually, what's crazy is um, the day after tomorrow is my diagnosis.
Yeah.
So it was the day after my son's birthday. Anyway, we finally talked to the doctor. He was like, "Hey, listen, this is easy. It's stage 1. It's not going to be a big deal. We're going to do an outpatient surgery. We're going to remove it. We'll have stitches. There's no reconstruction. It's going to be like a breeze. You're going to be fine." The hospital is 5 minutes from my house. So it was a very like, okay, we're gonna go in, we're gonna get this done. I was extremely terrified. I had all my community showed up for me, and my partner is very supportive, and like we are doing our absolute best to um, get me ready for this. And I go in, and I just remember being like so scared before the anesthesia because I'm terrified of anesthesia anyway. And I've had 3 C-sections, but this was for some reason much scarier than that because you don't leave with a baby, you leave with a hurt
Yep.
lung. And so I had the surgery done. Everything went really well from what we were told. I woke up. Uh, I went back to my parents' house to recover because I needed quiet. And it didn't seem like a huge deal. I think I had 15 stitches, so it was a huge deal. But but now it doesn't
Yeah.
seem like a huge deal.
Well, now of course it doesn't, but it seems to be that this all happened very fast as
It
well.
did.
So
So my diagnosis was January 23rd in 2022, and my first surgery was, I believe it was like February 3rd. It was like
okay.
really quick.
Well, within a
Um,
week, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a week or a week and a half, something really quick because they wanted to get to it to get the pathology done and make sure that, it was exactly what they thought it was. So I started healing from that surgery. And, I was like, you know what, this was terrible, but it's not bad. I don't need treatment. Like, nobody in my community had ever heard of tongue cancer. Like, this was like the most ridiculous thing ever to all these people. Anyway, about 3 weeks after, it was probably like March. No, it was maybe a month and a half later, actually. Um, all of a sudden, I started feeling another bump on my tongue, and I was like, "Why am I feeling this again? This is terrible." And they had told me before that like the reoccurrence for my that stage one was like very low. Like I'm not a smoker or a drinker, nothing should have come with it anyway. It was really bad luck on birthdays because it was my mom's birthday this time. Um, and I had felt this thing on my tongue, and this time it was like exploding. Like it really was really hurting me. And you could see that like this was obviously a problem. Like when I showed it to my mom, she was like terrified. She was like, this looks not good. And I was still healing. I wasn't even done healing it. So I went
Was
in.
it in the exact same location
Yep,
or?
the exact same location. Like it was like wild. Like it was like right behind it, right behind the stitches actually. Because my tumor, my first time, it was my left side, like right in the middle, right, like right in the middle of my left side. But yeah, the bump was starting, and then all of a sudden, I mean, it must have taken maybe not even a week for it to like open up and like become like this disgusting tumor thing. And it was way more painful than the first time. My ear was hurting again. I knew right away like something was wrong. So I went back to a follow-up appointment. Like it wasn't even like I had to make the appointment. Like this was a follow-up appointment from my first surgery. And my ENT looks at my tongue and he's like, I don't like the way this looks. He's like, this isn't healing right. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, we'd think that this would be much more far along and I can see this new lesion. And he was like, you need a PET scan, like right now. And I was like, oh, great, fantastic. Because I had had CTs before, but I had never had to go for a PET scan. And I went. I don't know if you've had a PET scan or if you've ever had to, but they inject you with like radioactive liquid, and then you have to sit in a room for like an hour to become radioactive, which is hilarious and terrifying at the same time. Um, and then the PET scan took like maybe 50 seconds. I mean, it was so quick. And then the results came back, and they were like, well, it looks okay, but actually not. The results, I thought they were okay. It turned out that I had two lymph nodes in my neck that were very suspicious. And I wasn't sure what they meant by suspicious at that point, but apparently they had like a solid middle or something that was suspicious of disease. And the bump on my tongue lit up like wildfire. We knew it was back. So he did another biopsy, had done a biopsy before that, and then it was I think the day after my mom's birthday actually. They called this time. Luckily, my auntie called and he said, "Look, I hate to tell you this, but you're right. It's back. It's worse, and I can't take this case anymore. I need to pass you on to someone more advanced than me." So
Wow,
that
I'm really surprised they didn't pass you on to a maxillofacial surgeon before, and that
right.
yeah, that's really. I mean, I don't know. It might be complete protocol, but from the stories that we've heard, that's quite unusual to stick with an ENT. And also, it's quite. I was waiting for you to say certain words like clear margins or.
Oh, well, so they did tell us that they got clear margins.
Oh,
But
okay. So
that,
they had that pathology, but.
well, if you want to hear the next part of it, it will maybe explain a little bit better.
Okay.
Um, so I live outside of Richmond, Virginia, in a suburb, and Richmond has an amazing hospital system. We have several, but MCV is a Medical College of Virginia. It's a huge, huge hospital with many different like locations. And we have a brand new cancer center that was built, not brand new, it's probably like 10 years old now, but at the time it
Still
felt
new.
brand new,
Yeah.
called Massey Cancer Center. And they do amazing work for cancer patients. And they have like your whole team is there anyway. My ENT, who I think maybe thought this was going to be really simple, didn't realize what was going to happen in the end. So he passed me off to a good friend and colleague of his, different health system, but they'd worked together before. Anyway, this doctor is an ENT oncologist. He's also, I cannot say this word, starts with an O, the otorhinologist, or I should have practiced that word before this, but it's like all included. He's like highly regarded, top of the board for ENT, surgery and cancer. Anyway, he took one look at my tongue, and it should have been that I hadn't gotten this appointment, but my original doctor was like, I think he was like, oh, I shouldn't have done this, should have passed it on originally. He got me an appointment with this doctor at Massey Cancer Center, like within a week, which is wild. It should have taken like months for me to get in. And when we got to the appointment, I took my mom with me. He looked at my tongue and he was like, this is beyond an ENT's, regular ENT's work. He's like, this is some serious stuff. So he took his own biopsy and came back very quickly, pretty much as like stage 4. We knew it was already that bad. And I remember I think it was like I had one appointment and then I had another appointment like 3 days later where we were already discussing surgery. Um, and he was like, listen, I know this is hard to hear, but we're going to have to remove about half of your tongue. And at that point, I was like ready to pass out. And he was like, and we're going to have to do some reconstruction. He was like, so that means we're going to need to take skin from somewhere, probably your leg, and create, this new half of leg tongue for you. And I was like, okay. And then he was like, but I'm not done. We also need to do neck surgery. And I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Because I'm not even 40 years old. I was, what, 37 at the time or something? It was terrifying. He was like, we're going to have to do what's called a neck dissection, and we need to test everything to see if there is cancer in these nodes because they're very suspicious and we can't tell on a scan. And I was like, oh my God. Well, the unfortunate part of all of this was during, the whole COVID thing. It was phasing out, kids were back in school, but it was still hard to get in the OR because people's surgeries had been pushed back for so long. So the surgery date they gave me, and granted, this was March 20th in 2022. The surgery date was May 19th.
Oh
And
my God.
I was in excruciating pain. I was so sad. They could not get me in because this was a big surgery. Um,
Yeah.
Granted, I was terrified. I was like kind of happy that it was far away because I had joined a few support groups online and everybody was like, eat all the food, like eat everything you love. And I was like, but it hurts to eat because I don't know how yours was, but it was really painful. I was in so much pain that like eating, I was doing it, but it was like torture. Like it hurt so bad.
I was in some discomfort, but more from the. So my ulcer, it burnt, but it burnt when I had something like chocolate. So it didn't burn with everything.
Gotcha.
And then the biopsy, the actual scarring from the biopsy, that was painful. But for me, it was slightly different. I was going into surgery feeling pretty human, like pretty normal.
Gotcha.
But with this bump, which would have become more painful the more time would have gone on.
Hmm.
But for me, it was more like, oh, I'm going into surgery now. I actually feel absolutely fine at the moment, but I know I'm going to be a car wreck the other on
Hmm.
the other side, which I'm sure you probably felt, because then we suddenly are talking
Yes.
about hands and legs and arms and different
Oh
body
my
parts
gosh.
getting involved. So, and yeah, it's a huge surgery. So did you end up waiting
I
till
did.
May?
So I did end up waiting till May. I think I felt like such a terrible parent. I could not do the work. My poor partner was just stuck doing everything that he could here. And then my mom had stepped in, and we were just a mess. Like, I do all of the cooking, I do most of the child rearing because he's working. So, like, he obviously, as soon as he's off work, he's involved in doing everything. But um, it was like we lost my whole existence until that surgery, and obviously a lot after. But because the waiting was just so painful, the tumor was getting bigger, it was growing. Like, I had all these appointments in between, and they were just like, we're really sorry, this is a big surgery, we need an OR for like almost a whole day probably. We can't push anybody out because these are other important surgeries. Anyway, during this time, my community is helping with dinners, and they're, trying to help take care of my family and myself. And I know it's different probably because you said you were feeling pretty good, but it's really hard when, like, everybody's helping you, but like, you're so angry and so in pain and just so uncomfortable that, like, you appreciate it, but like, you can't appreciate it like you really want to. Because all I wanted was to be done with this.
I'm also wondering sort of the mental health impact. Maybe now looking
Oh,
back as well. I mean, I would have been putting it. Well, not put it politely. I'd be fucked off by
yeah.
the first surgery and the ENT and the admission that actually you should have been referred to someone else, and
Well,
then the COVID delay, which I know, okay, COVID, it's in no one's, that whole thing that was in no one's control, but at the same time, this is squamous cell. This is a very invasive, fast
mhm.
growing. I assume these were all things they told you, or maybe they
Oh
didn't tell
yeah.
you, or yeah. So you're sort of thinking, gosh, I'm sitting on a ticking time bomb here. So I,
Uh-huh.
I can't even imagine how you dealt mentally for a whole 2 months.
Oh my God. It was, I've always had, challenges with anxiety, and, I was in therapy as a young child for severe anxiety issues. So that was no stranger to me. But this kind of sent everything into hyperdrive. Like, it's like that survival mode thing when you, like, can't think of anything else. You have like a tunnel vision. Like, am I going to die? Like, is this the end for me? Am I going to make it to surgery? Like, I still hadn't done like enough research on tongue cancer because I had literally never heard of it before. Like, I didn't even know it was an option. I don't chew tobacco. I don't drink. I'm not a smoker. I'm pretty boring. I feel like I should have had some more fun now because, like, if I had to go through that. But no, I was just stewing. I was just sitting in this space, and it was a negative space. And I know I was affecting my family because I was so upset and in pain. I mean, I was taking very strong pain medication to sleep because I was in so much pain. I was taking like Roxy's, like oxycodone and whatever it is that's mixed with, which I hate pain medication. So yeah, it was a very, very terrible few months, and I almost can't even tell you what happened during that time because I was in so much pain. I missed so many things for my kids in school. My youngest child is autistic. He is high functioning, but he has a hard time with like adaptive skills. So potty training, zipping, buttoning, like these are all things. And he was 5, so it was like this really important moment that I was missing out on helping him. But yeah, that was really hard. And then finally, we got to the time when I'm going to have surgery. And I can't tell you how terrible this morning was. I wanted to do it alone. Everybody wanted to come with me. I told them no. I have this thing about this whole cancer experience where I really needed to do it myself. I don't know why, but that was part of the mental challenge for me was I need to be able to handle this on my own. So most of the appointments, every surgery date, all those things, I did those myself. I didn't even want visitors. Like I don't know why, honestly, but it was like a mental thing where I needed to do that solitarily. I needed it for myself.
Could
Um,
have also been an aspect that you didn't want your loved ones to see you in
mhm.
those very vulnerable moments, especially when you're not really yourself during those
Oh,
times. But
absolutely. I didn't really want Ed to be around myself. So,
yeah,
um, but no, we finally got to the morning of surgery. I don't know if I'm going too far here, if I should
no,
continue.
no, yeah,
Uh,
please go.
but you go into this little room and they take all your stuff and your clothes, and I had brought like a very small bag of things. And my community had like been awesome. They ordered all these things off a wish list for me of like what I needed in the hospital bag. I was trying to take advice from people on the internet. Anyway, you're in this room, and my doctor was like already. I was like the first surgery. I think I got there at 5 a.m. Um, and the doctor hadn't come in yet, but anesthesia came in. They come in and they're like, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do," and I see on the anesthesia report that it's gonna be a 10 to 12 hour surgery. That was not what was told to me.
Oh
When
my God, you didn't know?
No, they told me 4 to 6 hours originally, and that's still long, but you know,
No, that's not long enough
well,
if you're doing neck dissection and reconstruction and
well,
yeah. So 12 is about the average, is what we'd
I
expect, 10 to
I had no
12.
idea. And the anesthesiologist was, she must have been like Eastern European, which my whole family is German. So my grandmother had that accent, I know, but it's very like a gruff, like direct, like she didn't want to play any games. And I was like, I didn't realize it was going to be that long. She's like, I need you to sign this release in case of death. And I was like, excuse me? I was already terrified. She's like, it's a long time to be under anesthesia. So like we need your signature that you approve. And I was like, I mean, do I have a choice? Like,
No.
and
Well,
so,
I was just wondering at this point, did you have any appointments leading up to the
oh
surgery
yeah,
where they discussed all the risks? Because they usually, well, that's how I
yeah.
experienced it. I had two appointments where they weighed me, they did all of those things. But then once, it was actually the plastic surgeon, which is one of the big team, just sat me down and said, look, you really need to know what the potential outcome could be and what the worst case scenarios could be, so you're
Hmm.
not waking up surprised.
Oh
And she
yeah.
took me through that list, and at the bottom of the list was death, basically. So it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah, they had definitely discussed it with me, but it was kind of just like the way she said it. It
yeah.
was, I was like, but, well, and I did kind of miss a few things. I had a bunch of appointments, obviously, leading up to everything with blood work and all of this, and trying to we did talk about risks. Actually, a really important thing I need to mention is that one of the things that I spoke to my ENT oncologist about, he was like, we have to talk about this because it's important. If something were to happen and you were either swelling too much or you were crashing for some reason, because I've had blood sugar issues in the past on the operating table, he was like, what we would do, because I wasn't going to need this, was we would create a tracheostomy in your neck. And I was like, I really don't want that. That is the one thing about this that terrifies me. And he was like, well, he's like, I'll tell you this, the other option is life support. And I was like, I don't want a tracheostomy. And I'm thinking my surgery is going to not be this difficult. It's going to be fine. I think they kind of rushed through a lot of the things with me, honestly, because they knew it would scare me because I'm high anxiety. Like it's marked in my chart, I'm high anxiety. Like they all know that. So I think that he retained, okay, she doesn't want a tracheostomy. Let's see if we can get around it in the surgery and she doesn't need anything, great. But if she needs something, we're just going to have to put her on the machines to save her. So that was discussed with me. We did have those conversations. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't retain all of it very well because I was scared and I was in pain. So,
I don't think any of us do. I don't know. Honestly, I don't think any of us do, and that was one of the talking points we had in one of our groups. That actually, after treatment, it would be really good to go over those things again,
oh yeah,
so we can look out for long-term side effects. And
exactly.
yeah, because there's so much I forgot, and not just that. I mean, once you have your surgery, I mean, I was high as a kite for most of
Oh
it,
no.
so
Well,
I had no idea. And the other thing is, I had the support. So my decision for me, it was clear that I wanted as many people as possible in the room.
gotcha.
But my husband was really, really vital because he was the one taking all the notes and making sure I had the right dosages after being released from hospital and all of that. Because, oh my God, I could have accidentally overdosed myself quite easily because I did not
Yeah,
know what day of the week or
of course.
tea time, so all of those things.
Yeah.
But yes, but also kudos to you for recognizing that actually, no, you needed your space in order to
Mm-hmm.
go through this. And actually, I have so much respect for anyone who's able to make very clear of what they want. So you also being able to communicate, I do not want a tracheostomy if at all possible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
how did things shake out in the end?
well, it was quite a ride. So of course I don't know anything because I'm in surgery. Like, they wheeled me in, they do that whole thing. They're like, okay, you're gonna go to sleep now, bye. And um I I feel bad because what was happening outside of the operating room with my family, I didn't really have time to communicate with them that this was going to be a longer surgery. My son was in sixth grade at the time, my oldest. My middle was in fourth grade, and my youngest really didn't know exactly what was going on. The instructions were when I got out of surgery, my children wanted the guidance counselor to, they wanted a phone call and they wanted the guidance counselor to pull them out of class so they would know, right, that I was okay. And also, my partner also obviously was in close contact with my mom, and they both weren't in the waiting room because they were. I didn't really want anyone sitting there, and they knew I was going to be admitted. So everybody was just waiting for this call. Well, the call like isn't coming. Nothing's happening. No one's getting information. Everybody's crying. It's like total chaos. I guess I wasn't there. I don't know, because I was obviously on the operating table. Anyway, I don't. So this surgery was on May 19th, 18th, and I think it was a Tuesday. And the first thing I remember was being pulled out of, I guess, sedation. Um, and I didn't have my glasses on, but I could read that the whiteboard in front of me said Thursday. And I all of a sudden realized I had a bundle of wires in my throat. There was a balloon in my chest. I was connected to life support, which was terrifying. And I realized I lost like over 24 hours. I had no idea what happened. I time traveled, right? First thing after that, I realized was that my ear pain was gone, which was like, even though I was like sitting there on life support, I was so relieved that that pain was gone. I can't even, it's such a weird perspective, but like,
No, pain is evil. Pain
it
is
is.
so cruel.
Oh my God,
It's
I was
yeah.
so happy that that was gone. But then after that, I started realizing, oh my God, like like machines are living for me. This is terrifying. What happened? Um, and so I asked I didn't ask, couldn't talk. Obviously, I was totally incapacitated, but I was awake. And a nurse came in and she could like see that I was finally out of it. And they were explaining to me, okay, you're on a life support machine, but you can breathe on your own. Like, we've turned off a lot of these things. Your vitals are good. You're okay. You're in ICU surgery, like surgical trauma unit. Everything's going to be okay. We're waiting for the extubation team, like, the respiratory team that takes tubes out and stuff to come and extubate all the tubes from you so you can be free of all of that. And I was like, oh my God. And I couldn't talk, but I wanted to be like, what happened to me? Like, I lost all this time. I was so terrified. And as the respiratory team was coming in to extubate me, there was an emergency, and the team of nurses in my room was like looking like terrified. They were like, "Oh my God, you're gonna have to sit here with this giant bundle of wires in your throat for an hour. Now you're awake. This is bad." Um,
Because
so,
I assume your gag reflexes come in
oh,
and...
oh my God, it was
Oh,
terrible. I every minute they were like, "Are you gonna throw up? Like, don't throw up, because like if you're gonna throw up, you have to let us know. It's really dangerous." And I'm like, "I can't talk." Like I'm raising my hand, like it was. I had my whiteboard, but I could barely use my hand. It was anyway. I was trying to figure out why my leg didn't hurt, right? Because they told me they were gonna take the skin from my leg. Well, turns out that is not what happened. Um, Obviously, the extubation team came, they took the tubes out. My doctor came in, and he was like, "Look, we're going to have a conversation. I need to tell you what happened in surgery." He's like, it ended up that the tumor was a lot bigger than we thought, um, and your leg wasn't going to be sufficient for what we needed. He's like, "So we took a bunch of skin from your neck and we used that because I was much more overweight at that point. So I had skin to use, and they did my neck dissection, which apparently turned into a radical neck dissection, which is apparently much worse than just a regular neck dissection. Um, I still haven't looked into all the details of exactly what that was, but it was a lot more invasive, I guess. Anyway, they took like my submandibular, I can't say it, the gland. They took that
yep.
out. They took all the stuff. Anyway, point being, it turns out they did a surgery called a submental island flap surgery,
Oh, wow,
which
okay.
I don't think is very common. It's been done since like the 40s or something, but it's not a commonly used surgery because the healing time is more difficult. So what ended up happening, and you can see here, my scar is really weird. See how my neck is all funny here?
Yeah.
See the scar up here? They
Yeah.
took skin from five different areas, like this big area, and they took five different areas they had to close it up from 5 points, right?
Wow.
Oh my gosh. I was like totally confused, but it made a lot of sense as to why my face was already in pain and I was on the good drugs. Um, but because of the way that all happened, I had insane swelling. So, you know how, like, I don't know if you had any lymph nodes taken or not, but when they take lymph nodes, I think they took like 40 or some crazy amount of lymph nodes from my neck on the left side. That fluid has nowhere to go, and it's so confused. And I had drains, I had like two different JP drains. Anyway, my face swelled up like two footballs. Like it was, my doctor had never seen anything like it before. He said it was the most severe case of lymph involved swelling he'd ever seen. And it was so uncomfortable. So at this point, I'm just realizing all this stuff, right? It's all just, you know how, like, when you come out of anesthesia, you're groggy, you're nauseous. Like, I'm just trying to figure out what happened and make sense of it. And so, anyway, he's like, "All right, look, so pathology isn't going to be back for a little bit. You're going to stay in ICU and we're going to figure it out. But right now, you're doing okay." So,
So just for our listeners who are not watching on YouTube,
mhm.
so just to describe where they took the tissue from is
Mhm.
from underneath your chin,
Yep, exactly.
going down to your sort of mid neck,
Yep.
and it's almost like a triangular, I would
Yeah,
say,
it's
shape.
so it's like this weird triangular. I think that's what I call it, an island flap. It's a
Yeah,
weird like island like under my chin, and
chin.
um it also created this very weird external thing in my chin. It's like a scar tissue that has jutted out. But yeah, they had to close it from five different places on the side of my face and under my chin. So it was, they took it from there, but I guess to close the skin graft, I don't know. It's so
After,
confusing.
yeah,
Yeah,
because
it
I
took,
probably would have taken a big area and then
yep,
closed it in like little nips
yep.
together Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if I did have made this a very good description, but just to
Sorry.
try for people to
It's
visualize. But it looks actually, I must admit, I think it looks really tidy.
it's not
I know
bad.
for I know for you yourself, because I've got the same with my scar.
Hmm.
It really is great, but I am still critical of it. But from my point of view, just to let you know, I think it looks really
Oh,
tidy. But I
thanks.
assume it, yeah, but I assume it will have come with its own challenges. Do you have full mobility? Is it hard
Uh,
or
so I'm actually waiting on surgery. I was supposed to have surgery a few weeks ago, but I got
okay?
pneumonia, so I didn't. But
Oh,
yeah, actually, I'm waiting on a surgery because I have so much fibrotic tissue. I have mobility, but it's not great. Um, I I'm sure a lot of us have it, but my left side, which is where it's my call it my surgery side, my left side has some like I think the nerves were cut maybe when they did all the surgeries, and I can't like you can tell like my left side I'm a little bit droopy. I don't have as much control over my lips or my mouth or like I'm very numb my whole left side honestly. But
yeah,
yeah, it's so hard that sleeping is terrible because I can't get comfortable. And it just feels like having like a bunch of rocks in there. Like it's all just like hardened. Um, so yeah, it's not great.
yeah.
It's
No, absolutely. Well, it all sounds like. I think when that didn't make sense. When plans have to change rapidly, I think that's when patient outcomes are maybe a bit more challenging than what they should have been.
oh
So,
yeah.
so just going back to the hospital before we jump ahead too much. So you're in ICU. You're starting to get your head around. I assume you were in the hospital for quite a lengthy stay.
You would think that, but it wasn't that long. I wish it had been longer. Um,
Right.
I think a lot of us probably. I feel like I heard Jamie say that she kind of got kicked out too because of COVID. On one of,
Yes.
I've listened to all of you guys' episodes because you're like celebrities to me. But 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 anyway, I um I was in ICU. I had some pretty terrible moments there. They were fantastic. That whole team was like amazing because in ICU it's like one nurse per like two patients or something. So you get so much like attention. And I was in a pretty bad way because I had all the different things hooked up to me and my body was trying to regulate, but they could not get this. They had to put a second IV in because one of my IVs had come out, and I think it must have been because I was like dehydrated or something, but they were digging in my arm to get this IV in. I was like screaming, and I'm a really quiet person. I'm a great patient, admittedly. I know that. And they were using the Doppler to try to find like a vein to get I mean, it was the most pain I've ever been in besides the surgery pain. And I remember they finally got it in. My whole arm was like yellow. Like, when you get a bruise and it's like
Yeah.
blue, but it's like really bad, it turns yellow. That is what happened to me. So I had that pain. But anyway, I was the second day they had me up walking, or the third day walking the unit with help. I had someone holding me, and I had like a contraption around my waist. But I remember, like, I didn't know any of the nurses or doctors in this ICU, and I'm walking laps with my team, and all of them are like, "Good, Mrs. Volks, you look great. I can't believe you're up and walking. You look awesome." And I was like, "Who are you?" Like, it was so funny. I had my whiteboard. I was trying to like, I still couldn't talk because my tongue was like ginormous. We all know how that feels. Um, but I remember like on the third or fourth day, they were like, "Hey, listen, I know this is like good and bad, but we got to move you to a floor. You got to get out of ICU." And I was like, in my head, I'm like, "Why are they taking me out of here? Like, I still need all this help." And they were like, "Well, we need the beds and like your vitals are stable." And anyway, they moved me up to what they call a telemetry floor, which
Okay.
I think that's a floor for like mental head stuff, like head illness,
Okay.
or because it was where they had room, right? It was like the 11th floor or something of one of these towers. It was a corner room, so I was the end of the hallway. And unfortunately, because I couldn't talk, even pushing that stupid call button to the nurse's station, they would answer and say, "Hello, what can I help you with?" I couldn't even like make sounds. And so they would ignore me. It was really terrible. The hospital system itself is great, but that care was terrible, and I'm not missing it.
That's a real error. That
Oh
should have
God.
been on their radar, that they have someone who
Yeah.
can't verbalize. So
No, so
yeah, that's
at that point I had visitors coming. I had my mom, I had my partner, I had my brother was coming. And they were all having to go get nurses for me because I couldn't get up to go to the bathroom. I was attached to an IV. I think I had like a Dialidad, whatever that pain med button. You know, I had a button. The button was
yeah.
great.
Oh yeah, the morphine button. Yeah, yeah,
Morphine, yes, it was
yeah, the
morphine.
morphine button. Yeah, and the morphine. Yeah, but yeah, I think that was the same for me. Once ICU was fine because you're so looked after, and then once when I got moved onto a regular ward, which in my weirdness was a plastic surgery ward, so it was yeah, just a very
Oh
strange
yeah.
mix of people. And then, but I had my own room because of the forearm flap and infection risk. But you have a shut door, so no one can see or hear you. You press the button while everyone's always running about. So it was really important to me to have Nick there for the first 2-3 days, basically solid. He was meant to go back to work, but that just didn't happen. And thankfully, his work were really supportive in him not going to work. But I really needed him to advocate for me to go to the nurse's station and says, oh, we need more pain medication, or she needs her feed, or we need some clean sheet. Like in the end, he actually ended up washing me and changing the sheets and helping me go to the toilet.
Oh my gosh.
Because also we just felt so NHS has got staffing issues, so they were under so much pressure, and I could see from the little window, all I could see was nurses basically running backwards and forwards all the time. So it was like we were going to try and do as much as we could, and only sort of disturb them when we really were unsure about something. But that's not how it's meant to be, let's be honest.
No.
So but yeah, for you, I guess there must have been a sense of relief for your friends and family and community to come around to really advocate for you and get the help that you needed.
It was, but I think the bigger problem was we had visiting hours and no one was allowed to stay with me. So I could only have a visitor until 8 o'clock at night. After that, I was on my own. I like couldn't wait to get out of there, but I was also scared to go home because my swelling was so bad. It was like I thought I was gonna like explode. Like I thought my skin was just gonna burst. I'll have to send you some photos afterwards so you can see, but it was really terrifying. And speaking of feeds, I had I had a nasal feeding tube. I guess it goes into your stomach, and whatever they were feeding me was making me so sick. Like I must have been like allergic to it or had a sensitivity, but it was just destroying my stomach. And that's already terrible because you're already dealing with other pain. And I remember just I could not wait to get it out. Like I just wanted that feeding tube out. And one of the things that I had to do to get it out and go home without it was to ingest at least liquids and maybe yogurt without, the tube. And I think this was day 7 I was there. Um, and I just was like totally over it all. And the doctor came in because I was like, I'm ready to go home. And he was like, nope, not yet. You haven't eaten anything. um, and they brought me a liquids tray because he was like, if you want to try, go ahead. And I think I like, like how like when like a car is on top of someone and someone gets like superhuman powers and they like lift the car, but they're like not like humans shouldn't be able to do that, right? I think that's what happened with my body. I was like, I am going to drink this because I am not keeping this stupid feeding tube in. I hate it. It's making me sick. I want to go home. Like, I'm going to drink this. And so I did. I was able to get some
Wow.
liquid down. And then I took like a spoon of yogurt. I don't know if I like actually swallowed it, but
It might just got lost
yeah,
somewhere in this.
exactly. But they thought I did. and that was enough for them to pull my tube, and that was such a relief because oh my God, I don't know why. I'm a very sensitive person to like sensory stuff, like the texture and feeling of something. And that was so terrible to me. I just could not wait to get it out. And I remember like how scary it was when he pulled it, but I was
It's
so
fast.
happy.
It's so quick, but
Yeah.
so gross.
No, it was
So,
so disgusting, but I was so
yeah.
happy because then they were like starting to get my discharge stuff ready. And then my doctor came in and he was like, "Hey, we got the pathology back." And I was like, "Oh, great. This is probably not going to be a great conversation."
But it's great that
um,
they got that fast. I mean,
they
mine
did.
took a month after surgery to
Yeah,
get that.
I don't think they got it all back. I think it was like they got enough to know what they needed, like from the frozen sections that they'd sent off. And he was like, "Hey, so unfortunately, there were cancer in your nodes. We found, I think, three different lymph nodes that had cancer, but it was encapsulated. So, I mean, it didn't leak. It wasn't metastatic at that point. It was because it was in my lymph nodes in my neck, but like it hadn't leaked into my body. It was still in those lymph nodes." He was like, "So that means you're going to need radiation. Absolutely." He was like, um, and I'm not trying to incriminate my original ENT surgeon. He's like, the reason we think this came back is stage four. It was like PN2, PN3 or something tumor. And it was like almost 11 millimeter, 11 something depth or something. He was like, because it came back like that, he's like, we've done some research and we think that the first doctor missed a ventricle on the original tumor. And that's why this came back so fast, so terrible. But yeah, at that point, we knew I was going to need radiation. We knew, he told me at that point I was probably going to need also chemotherapy. And he didn't want me to leave the hospital without knowing that. So I didn't have this idea that I was done. Um, it,
Which is probably actually a good thing to mentally prepare yourself and not get carried away with hopefully this is it, but actually there's more in store.
Absolutely. I'm sorry I'm so long winded. It's a long
No,
stuff.
no, 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 no. That is fine because actually those nuances are really important, and it is the sentence none of us want to hear. Radiation. I will just assume you didn't have access to the young tongues back then. I don't actually know
No.
if we existed or not. I'm trying to think. I think it was
You know what?
2022 or
Yeah, I think so. It was my treatment started late June of 2022. So I think that I maybe had like seen something about you guys, but I don't think there were like major support groups or I remember I think I found you guys because I'm trying to remember what happened, but I saw something. Jamie had posted something. I found her randomly. I searched tongue cancer on Instagram, I
yeah.
think, just because I was desperate to find like anybody that understood it. And all the people in the other support groups, no offense to them, and God bless them, but they were older. A lot of them were like older people or like had been smokers for years or like I didn't relate to them being like 37, 38 years old. I didn't find my place. Like I couldn't, I had all these people around me, like, making sure my kids were happy and that my family was eating and all this stuff, but no one understood what I was going through. And um, I think I came home way too early from the hospital. I was so uncomfortable from the swelling, and then something happened that was really terrible. Right on where my scar is, where that I had that little island area where they pulled everything, it opened. It opened up, and it was like a tunnel into my neck. Like you could see my internal stuff. It was disgusting and terrifying. And they didn't want to close it. They just packed it with like gauze and stuff. It was so gross. It was terrible. So I'm at home. I'm not really ingesting things. I had a regimen every single day. My someone in my family would take me to Starbucks, and I would order a shot of espresso in a venti cup with ice, and then I would pour a protein drink into it. So I would have, because coffee was like comfort to me. So I would have this one. cup of coffee and a protein drink, and that would be like my whole day meal because that was all I could get. And I didn't come home with a feeding tube or anything. So, I'll fast forward a little bit because there's a lot of needed information. But um, something that was going on is that over my birthday, which is June 14th, and granted, I had my surgery mid to end of May. My son, my oldest son, plays travel baseball. And he was going to get the opportunity to go with his team to play in Cooperstown, New York. I don't know if you know much about like Dreams Park, um,
Yeah.
but it's like this huge thing. It's like when you're 12, your team, if they get invited, get to go to this amazing place and play baseball on. It's like a summer camp for baseball, but it's like
Oh.
super important. And anyway, I really wanted to go on this trip. It meant a lot to me. I wanted to go see my son play. And Virginia is far from upstate New York, so I had to get permission from my doctors to go. It was going to be the last thing I did right before treatment started. And they were reluctant, but they realized how important it was to me. So they let me go. So my mom drove us up there, and we went, and it was amazing because my son, who had never hit a home run over the fence, hit a homer over the fence for the first time on my birthday in Cooperstown. And it was like I was supposed to be there. Like it was really important. And then the day we got back from that trip, I was at the hospital because I was starting treatment. So it was like such a weird thing, but that was like the last fun thing I did. And I was in
And
pain.
also something that you probably needed just to get through. I don't know how they prepared you for radiation, and if they gave you enough or too much information, or did you have any inkling into what you were in for?
Um, that's a really great question because no, I don't think they can tell you enough because if they do, you won't do it. Um, Radiation, and I'm going to say this as poignantly as I can, I've said this to my family a lot of times. Radiation probably saved my life, but also ruined it. Um, Chemo was hard, but it was not hard like radiation. I literally felt by the second week, and I had 66 grays of radiation. I'm not even sure what that unit means. I just know it's a lot. I had radiation every day. I think it was 5 days a week for, I think I had 36 sessions, 37
Yeah, that
sessions.
sounds about right. Yeah.
Right. And I remember I went in to have my mask fitted and I was like, oh, this is okay. I can do this. I'm not really a claustrophobic person. I was laughing with the people. I was healing finally from surgery. I was eating food, which was like awesome. I like finally started eating solid food at this point, and this was like June 28th or something. And I remember the next week I started the actual treatment. And the first one was okay. I'm a writer, so I still haven't written it, but I was going to write an article or a zine about the experience of radiation. And so I had someone take a picture of me holding my mask, on the machine and everything, and it was lighthearted. Well, by that like first week, I started to feel like literally I was burning from the inside out. Like I'd never experienced pain like that before. My targets were on the left side of my mouth, like right above my lower jaw and on my neck. So, right, that's why we couldn't start treatment until my wound healed enough. But it was like right on the left side of my neck, um, pointing right to the middle, and I started to feel this like metallic, like disgusting taste in my mouth. And I had just started enjoying food again, and immediately everything started tasting like metal. Um,
That's the sucker punch, isn't it? You
oh my
just
God.
just about recovered from the first really big traumatic experience, and now you're getting hurtled into that
Well,
second.
and then cisplatin, I think I had 7 treatments of cisplatin chemo, which, they walk into the room when they're about to give you your chemotherapy and they're all like in a spacesuit because it's like so toxic that I was told that cisplatin is actually the sister drug to mustard gas, I think. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but That's what I was told. So they come in a spacesuit and they've got the black bag. They're about to hang the chemo and it's got like skulls and like toxic all over it. And you're like, oh, this is really
Oh,
fun.
you put this in me?
Yeah,
In me? Are you sure?
I know.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, this is really pleasant. um, anyway, by that second week, when I had gotten already my second chemo treatment, and I was going through this radiation, I mean, I just remember like not being able to move. Like I would get home from my treatment, and I had this one corner. We don't have this couch anymore, but we had a couch in our living room, and it had like a corner spot, and I would literally just melt into that spot and sleep for hours. Like I'd never felt anything like that before. It just drained me so hard. And by like the fourth week of radiation, I didn't have a voice anymore. I couldn't swallow anymore. My doctors were begging me to get a feeding tube, like a Mickey tube in my stomach. I refused. I was so terrified from surgery, the first surgery and the second surgery, that I refused to let them give me a feeding tube. I also refused a port. So I did chemotherapy through my hand, my veins. They were really angry at me that I would not get the port, but they couldn't force me. And I said, I will not have another surgical procedure unless it's a life or death thing. So no, I'm not doing that. So I think they were all annoyed with me. My veins had like all collapsed by the end of chemo.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say there's different points of views on both of those. We have some people in the community who couldn't have gotten through radiation without a feeding tube. Others that decided not to have a feeding tube. And with the port is the only thing more from a logistics. I think I probably would have preferred to have a port because I'm the same as you. I have no veins. Every time I go for an MRI and they have to dig around. They always start on the arms, then they go onto the hands. And actually last time they had to get into my feet because they couldn't find anything.
Really?
Yeah, it's not pleasant.
No.
So I probably would have gone, please cut me open.
Oh, man.
But again, good for you for advocating of what was right for you at that time.
I mean, it was the right choice for me, even though it was stressful. I know it was the right choice for me.
Yeah.
No, that radiation, and I'll jump ahead just a tad, but radiation has really, really made my life hard. I have chronic dry mouth. I have trouble sleeping. I lost my taste buds for 2 years. I just got them back, like
Oh,
maybe
wow.
like 7 or 8 months ago. Everything tasted like wet cardboard. It was probably also the chemotherapy, but I could not eat food. I was eating rice. Like I used to buy the sticky rice from our local Costco. It came in like a 10 pack, and I could swallow it because it was like, I don't know how to explain it, but it wasn't like granular, like
Yeah.
it was all.
Combined. Yeah.
So that's I ate like 2 of those every day for like a really long time because I didn't need to taste it because it was the texture I could handle. So I had the weight to lose, so that was okay. Um, and I did lose a lot of weight because I've gained a lot of it back, but I did lose a lot of weight. But radiation at this point, my teeth are all falling out because my jaw is also dying on my left side. But yeah, I think this is a bold thing probably to say, especially on a podcast. I will never do radiation treatment ever again. I do not care what the circumstances are. The quality of my life is so compromised because of it. I can't work. I can't. There's a lot of things I can't do because of the things that I'm dealing with from radiation. That I've told my family that too, and they get upset at me every time I say it. I will do chemo again. I will never do radiation again ever.
Well, there's different things to be said. So once you've had radiation to the head and neck, it's very unlikely you'll ever get the option to have radiation again. It's
I know.
very unheard of to have it twice. I think there's what's really important to highlight, and we've seen that in some of the research work we've been doing with some researchers, is that the combined effect of chemo and radiation has probably exacerbated your experience of radiation and the long-term effects. If it was radiation only, I do wonder if the outcome would have been slightly different.
I agree.
But chemo definitely, although it might be perceived as less invasive, actually the combined effect of the two means that some of those long-term effects are maybe more severe. And I say that with no medical background, but just in terms
No.
of what the information that is available out there.
Well, you know what?
Um,
I agree with you because, and I'm sorry to cut you off,
no,
um,
no, please.
but I have very, very severe neuropathy from chemotherapy on my left side. And actually, this is kind of a funny story. Once I started to feel a little better from treatment, and I'm talking like a year after, because it has taken me a very long time to feel somewhat normal, which I still don't. But I was making dinner for my family, and my little guy is very specific about what he eats. So he wanted spaghetti with red sauce, as he calls it, on it. And I had the plate in my hand and I was going to bring it to him. And all of a sudden, I flung it at the ceiling with my left hand. And I was like, what happened? I didn't do that. And so we realized that I have like nerve damage or something, and my hand will like do stuff, like my arm, like I don't know what it's from exactly. No one really gets it, but it's got to be like, they think it's nerve damage. So we started calling my left arm Bob. And my son, my little guy, will like if I accidentally throw something, which I still do, he'll be like, "Oh, it's Bob again!" Like he loves it, thinks it's so funny. But
Oh, that's brilliant.
yeah, it was a
Oh,
way to
Bob.
like make it funny, but it's very
Yeah.
annoying.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There was also something else I wanted to just highlight of something that you said, which I find really, really hopeful, is the fact that you said you didn't have any taste for a really long time, but 2 years later, it's starting to come back.
Oh
And there'll
man,
be so many people listening who, post radiation will be going, my taste is still not back. And we do know in the community there are some people that got their taste continued to
hmm
improve for years.
I
So
feel
it's,
that. Yeah, I feel
yeah.
it right now.
So it's like, not, don't give up hope.
No,
These
don't.
things are rebuilding,
Yeah.
and I don't know
Well,
how, but
Isn't
somehow
isn't
it's.
that funny? Well, and you know what's so crazy is, and this is just giving a little more background on my life. I come from a big Jewish family, right? My family's all from New York. We're like the rebels who moved to the South when I was a little kid. My dad's a musician. We followed his band here. It's a whole long story. Anyway, so Jewish culture is a lot about food. We love food. We cook a lot of like cultural foods, and it was really hard for me because that's really how I can like it's like a huge connection to my heritage is big Jewish dinner on certain holidays. And I remember the first Passover, I couldn't taste the matzo balls, and I was so sad. And this past one, we had Passover last year. I was so excited because I could finally taste the soup and the matzo balls. The only thing I didn't lose was coffee. Everything else tasted like nothing. I could taste coffee forever. Don't know why.
It's really bizarre. Lots of people have that. They always say
Really?
coffee was the saver. Yeah,
Huh.
Jamie also was the same. The first thing
Weird.
that came back for her was coffee.
That's so
Um,
cool. Huh.
yeah. It's really. I don't know why. It'd be interesting
Huh.
to do some research into it to see
Yeah.
what type of components it is, and maybe it could be applicable to other tastes. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it was coffee, and then the other thing was chocolate burned me. I could not eat chocolate forever. I just recently started being able to eat, like, of course, expensive chocolate, like Lindt chocolate, or like even better than that. Like, I don't know, in America we have crappy chocolate, but um, but it finally didn't burn me so bad. It burns at the end sometimes, but I am so excited to be able to eat that again.
And I think that's really important because of all the challenges we in different levels, but we all face lots of different challenges, is to
Hmm.
find those small moments that we can still or
Yeah.
again enjoy and take something out of.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry to keep going off track and cutting you off, but I wanted to highlight something that has really helped my family. And I don't know if this probably isn't something that happens overseas, but in America, a lot of people don't know about it. When I was sick, a friend of my mom's sent me a text with a link in it and it was a link to a summer camp. And this camp was free for a week for my kids, and it was only for children that have parents or relatives affected by cancer. It's called Camp Kesem, Kesem, and it's a charitable organization, and it's run through colleges. The colleges all have a chapter, not all of them, but a lot of them. And to be a counselor, you have to obviously meet requirements, but a lot of them are like in mental health or like becoming nurses. Anyway, this camp, my kids went when I was finishing radiation. They went away for a week. They didn't want to go. When we went to pick them up, they were crying because they didn't want to leave. Um, they connected with their, like, they call it their family, and like everyone there, no one goes by their real name. They all have camp names. So like
Oh,
my daughter is Eminem, and my son's name is Pew Pew, like, like shooting a laser gun, Pew Pew. That's actually his last name. But anyway, they went to this camp, and the goal of the camp is to make it so that these kids have like the best week of their life. Like, it's so much fun, and everything is charity donated. And like, they have been 3 years now in a row. They look forward to it. It's like their favorite thing they do every year, and they support us through the year. We have like 2 or 3 meetups during the year. I can't tell you enough. If you're from the USA and you're listening, look for a KESEM, KESEM chapter, because it is so important. That you could have had any cancer and send your child there, but honestly, it's the best thing that happened to them throughout this whole thing.
I just had a meeting with another organisation just like that. They're called, I was just looking at my notes from yesterday, they're called Make a Dream Camp. They're in Montana. And they also have a camp for children of cancer patients. But actually, when your kids go to Cassim camp next year, you can go to Montana, because they have actual groups, like week-long camps for people with cancer, and they've
No
got
way.
and they got different age groups and lots of different activities. It's free to go there. You have to pay for your travel to get there, and I know getting to Montana, and they're quite in the middle of nowhere, it can be a bit of a challenge, but they also offer support with that as well. So, and it came across them. There were a couple of young tongues that attended camp last year, and that's how they
Cool.
connected with us. So yeah, so if you're looking, and they've got a camp where you can bring your spouse. So
Oh, neat.
if the kids are in their camp for a week, and you and your partner want to go to the other one,
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
there
that's
you go.
awesome. I've always wanted to go to Montana, so
There
why
we go.
not, right? So cool.
Yeah. Lauren, it's been such a delight having you today.
Oh,
Thank you
thanks.
so much for sharing your story. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. And it's been such a great chat to really, again, I've learnt, every time I have these interviews, I myself learn so much. And I am 100% sure there is someone listening that will be nodding away and identifying with you, and will probably feel really heard, and really happy to know that there is other people like them out there. So thank
I
you
hope
so
so.
much.
No, thank you so much for allowing me to do this. It was a really cathartic event. I really appreciated it.
That's great. Yeah, that. I always feel like when you can talk about your story, it really helps to also compute it and go through it. So I am looking forward to seeing some of your writing.
Yeah, sure.
I'm just putting it out there
Yeah,
about
I'm published in a magazine locally, so I will happily send
amazing.
it on.
Yes, please. That'd be amazing. And yes, thank you so much to our listeners for being with us again today. If you would like to come on and share your story on the podcast, please email us on podcast@youngtonguesglobal.com. We'd love to have you. Make sure you follow us on social media and give us a nice review. But otherwise, I say thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful week, and we will catch you again next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.